Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Our lecture today will be about palm of hand fascia spaces muscles presented by Assistant Professor Asma Ibrahim Ahmed. ILOs will be about skeleton of the hand, synovial sheaths of the flexor tendons, deep fascia of the palm, covered thenar, hypothenar, palmar aponeurosis and fibrous flexor sheath, fascial compartment of the palm, fascial spaces of the palm, and finally muscles of the hand. About the skeleton of the hand, as we know before, the skeleton of the hand is formed of three stations. Station 1 is the carpal bone, which is formed of 8 bones presented in 2 rows, proximal and distal, each row containing 4 carpal bones. Second station is the metacarpals, which are 5 arranged from lateral to medial, first of the thumb and fifth of the little finger, and finally the fingers, which is formed of phalanges, proximal, middle, distal phalanges, and each phalanx formed of base, shaft, and head. Regarding the synovial sheath of the flexor tendons, it is essential to cover the flexor tendons by a membrane to facilitate the. Here is the What about the synovial sheath of the flexor tendons? It is composed of 2 layers, like the membrane which cover the pleura and heart, like the pleura or pericardium. Pleura which cover the lungs and pericardium which cover the heart. Each of them formed of 2 layers, parietal and visceral layers. Here synovial sheath looks like them, formed of outer layer and inner layer. Between them there is a potential space containing thin film of fluids. Its function is to lubricate and facilitate the movement of tendon along the bone. This synovial sheath of long flexor tendon starts 1.5 inch above the flexor retinaculum. This is the flexor retinaculum, and we have 4 synovial sheaths surround the long flexor tendons. Look that this synovial sheath is a dark blue tubular sacs, which is characterized by letter 6 in Arabic or inverted L shape. It has transverse part and vertical part extending along the medial side of the little finger. This prolongation along the tendon of the little finger, and this is the transverse part, which is known as the remainder part of the ulnar bursa. Up till now we have 3 bursas. Number 1, bursa or synovial sheath, which covers the flexor carpi radialis, radial bursa, which surrounds the flexor pollicis longus, ulnar bursa, which surrounds the remaining 4 tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis and 4 tendons of flexor digitorum profundus, and has a medial prolongation along the little finger, surrounds the tendon of the little finger. This is the third bursa, which is known also as a common synovial sheath. Here this bursa is invaginated from the lateral aspect by the long flexor tendons, which are 8 tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis and profundus together. Ulnar bursa, as we said before, it extends medially along the medial side of the little finger like this to surround the long flexor tendons until their final destination in the distal phalanx, while the transverse part or the middle part of the common synovial flexor sheath ends at the middle of the palm at the proximal transverse palmar crease. If you look to your palm, you will see 2 transverse palmar creases, proximal one and distal one. The synovial sheath surround the flexor digitorum superficialis and profundus, which is the ulnar bursa, ends at the middle of the palm at the level of proximal transverse crease of the palm. And finally, the 4th synovial sheath, which is known as digital synovial sheath. This digital synovial sheath surrounds the remaining long flexor tendons as the digits, so they name digital because they only present on the digits. They are concerned with index, middle, and ring fingers. Each of these long flexor tendons of these three fingers had their own digital synovial sheath. It begins at the level of distal palmar crease and at the site of insertion of the long flexor tendons. Now we finished the first item, which is the synovial sheath, and remember that we have four synovial sheaths. Synovial sheath around the flexor carpi radialis and radial bursa, ulnar bursa, digital synovial sheath. Let's shift to deep fascia of the palm of the hand. The deep fascia of the palm thickened in many areas and has a specific or peculiar name in each area. Number 1. Flexor retinaculum of the wrist, which is a thickened band of deep fascia in front of the carpal bones and converting the carpal bones into concave tunnel known as carpal tunnel. The flexor retinaculum of the wrist attached medially to two bones, which are basiform bone and hook of Hammett, while laterally attached to scaphoid and trapezia. This is the green color quadrangular structure representing the flexor retinaculum extending in front of the carpal bones, converting them into carpal tunnel. We have many structures passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum and others passing deep to it. What about the structures passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum, which is an important point of an MCQ questions? Two ulnars, two palmars, one tendon. Two ulnars, two palmars, one tendon. Two ulnars. From medial to lateral here we have the yellowish ulnar nerve, the reddish ulnar vessels. Okay, two palmars, we have here the palmar cutaneous branch of the ulnar nerve here, and this is the palmar cutaneous branch of the median nerve, and one tendon which is a tendon of flexor of palmaris longus muscle, one of the flexor muscles which is tendon of palmaris longus muscle. Two ulnars, two palmars, one tendon. What about the structure passing deep to the flexor retinaculum or in the carpal tunnel here, deep to the flexor retinaculum? Remember that the most important structure passing deep to it is the median nerve. Median nerve, when it's compressed here, make a clinical problem known as carpal tunnel syndrome, and with a specific presentation in the hand. Others, nothing but the flexor tendons of the remaining fingers and their synovial sheath and ulnar and radial bursa. Okay, what are the fibrous flexor sheath? It is a thickened arched band of deep fascia in front of the finger. This is the fibrous flexor sheath. Looks like an arches representing thickening of the deep fascia in a form of arches in front of the finger, together with the bone of the phalanges, form an osteophyseal tunnel containing the long flexor tendons within their digital synovial sheath. What is the function of this fibrous flexor sheath? Its function is to hold the tendon in position during flexion. So it extends from H to B. From H here, head of the metacarpal, to B here, which is the base of the distal phalanx. Again, this is the curved or arched bands of thickened deep fascia forming the fibrous flexor sheath. It is a thickened arched band of deep fascia in front of the fingers, formed together with the bone and osteophyseal tunnels to give passage for the long flexor tendon within their synovial sheath, digital synovial sheath. Its function is to keep the long tendons in position during the flexion. It begins here from the head of the metacarpals till the base of the distal phalanges. the apex is attached or giving continuity to the flexor retinaculum and giving insertion to the tendon of palmaris longus tendon, while the base is divided into 4 slips to the medial 4 fingers. This is the division or slips of the palmar aponeurosis to the medial 4 fingers. What is the function of the palmar aponeurosis? Number 1, improve gripping of the objects. Number 2, protect the underlying structures. What is the important structures we want to protect? Excellent. Sure. They are the long flexor tendons within their synovial sheath. The nerve supplies these long flexor tendons and arteries supplying them. Excellent. Tendons on the long flexor and their synovial sheath. Arches or arteries, superficial palmar arch and its branches. Nerves, which is terminal branches of median and ulnar nerves. The third function is to regulate the environment of the palm. Send a septa, palmar aponeurosis send a lateral and medial palmar septa to divide the palm into compartments, thinner compartments and hypothinner compartments, and the middle compartment of the palm, like this. This is the palmar aponeurosis, which send a septa in the depth of the palm to divide into compartments, like the thinner compartment toward the thumb, hypothinner compartment toward the middle little finger, and middle compartment. What is the clinical application of knowing the palmar aponeurosis? We see many people with flexed little and ring fingers. This deformity known as Dupuytren contracture. Dupuytren contracture is a deformity resulting from the contraction of the medial part of the palmar aponeurosis and the shortening of it, resulting in this deformity, which is flexion of the little and ring fingers. This is due to many causes, rheumatological or orthopedic problems of the palm. As we said before, by means of the deep fascia and its septa, we can divide the palm into many compartments. Toward the thumb, laterally here, we have a lateral compartment containing the thinner muscles. Toward the little finger, we have a medial compartment containing the hypothinner muscles, and in the middle, we have the intermediate compartment, which is deep to the palmar aponeurosis. The intermediate compartments deep to the palmar aponeurosis again is subdivided by means of intermediate palmar septa into lateral part and the middle palmar compartment. The lateral part near the thinner known as thinner compartment, while the second is known as mid palmar compartment. Each of them will containing long flexor tendon, lumbricals, and nerve and vessel supplying this. The compartment toward the lateral aspect near the thumb containing the tendon of flexor pollicis longus, tendon of index finger, long flexor tendon of index finger, first lumbrical, digital nerve and vessels of the thumb, and radial aspect of the index, while the mid palmar compartment containing what? Yes, excellent. Again, long flexor tendon, remaining lumbricals, remaining digital and vessels of the remaining fingers. Long flexor tendon of middle ring little, remaining lumbricals, second, third, fourth, as we have 4 lumbricals, the first one in the lateral, the remaining in the mid palmar compartment. Vessels representing the superficial palmar arch and digital nerve and vessels supplying them. Here is the intermediate compartment. By means of intermediate palmar septum, divide into lateral compartment and the mid palmar space. We have finished the fascial compartment, and let's study the fascial spaces of the palm. What is meant by fascial spaces of the palm? they are a potential spaces filled with loose connective tissue. What is the function? Its function is to limit the spread of infection. The most important facial space is the bulb space infection. It gives this clinical presentation. The distal phalanges of the finger, in front of it we see red, hot, tender, swollen finger, and there is a pus projecting from here. This is an abscess or an infected bulb space. So, what is a bulb space? It is a space which lies over the palmar surface of the distal phalanx. What is the boundary of this space? And what is the contents of this space? It is bounded dorsally by the phalanx and ventrally by the deep fascia, traversed by septa dividing it into many loculi containing subcutaneous fat and containing 3Ds, digital artery to supply the diaphysis of the distal phalanx. Again, this is the bulb ever. So, what the clinical significance of the bulb space? If there is infection, lead to accumulation of pus which cause thrombosis and obstruction of arteries inside the space, causing necrosis of the distal phalanx. Number 2, infection will be very painful due to accumulation of pus in a narrow space under tension. Number 3, to drain the bulb space, all loculi must be opened transverse incision. We have finished the item of bulb space or facial spaces, and lastly muscles of the hand. Here is the thumb. This is the movement of the thumb. Every movement and its opposite. The abduction makes the thumb in a vertical plane perpendicular to the bulb. Here adduction, the thumb is in the same plane of the whole medial forefinger. Extension, here it is laterally present, and flexion and opposition, which is turning the thumb medially and its palmar surface or get in contact with the palmar surface of the remaining forefinger in counting action. The second group of the short muscles of the hand at the little finger, while the group A at the thumb known as thenar, the group B at the little finger known as hypothenar muscles. Again, they are 3 main muscles and 1 superficial to them, subcutaneous, which is the fourth one, like the previous group also was 4, 3 and 1. Here we have 3 to the little fingers or the hypothenar eminence, abductor digiti minimi, flexor digiti minimi, opponens digiti minimi, behind, between them, deep and between them, and palmaris brevis muscle superficial in the superficial fascia above the mentioned muscles. Action of these muscles: laterally, abductor digiti minimi, abduct the little finger; medially, flexor digiti minimi, flex the little fingers; deep and in between, opponens digiti minimi; and the fourth one known as palmaris brevis muscle, which is a subcutaneous muscle superficial to them. Its nerve supply is the superficial branch of ulnar nerve. Its function is improving the hand grip by increasing the hollow of the palm. The third group of small muscles of the hand are the muscles of the fingers. Group C, small muscles of the fingers, which include A, lumbricals and interossei muscles. We have 4 lumbrical muscles, excluding the thumb, starting from the index L1, middle L2 or lumbrical muscle number 2, and ring finger give attachment for the lumbrical muscle number 3, and the little finger gives the attachment for lumbrical muscle number 4. So index, middle, ring, little, L1, L2, L3, L4. If you see, the first and second lumbricals are unipinnate muscle, while the third and fourth lumbricals are bipinnate muscles. Nerve supply of these lumbricals: first and second take nerve supply from medial nerve, while third and fourth take nerve supply from the ulnar nerve. This is an important MCQ point. And their action together with the following group interossei is to put the hand in writing position. Putting the fingers in writing position by flexion of the metacarpophalangeal joint. Here is the metacarpals, here is the carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. The flexion of the metacarpophalangeal joint and extension of the interphalangeal joint, helping in putting the hand in writing position. And the interossei muscles are 8, 4 dorsal and 4 palmar interossei. They occupy the spaces between the metacarpals, so their name interossei muscles. The palmar interossei are unipinnate as you see, and the dorsal interossei are bipinnate. The thumb and little fingers has no dorsal interossei. Why? Because they have their own abductor muscles. As the thumb has abductor pollicis longus and the little finger has abductor digiti minimi, so they are not in need for more abduction. They have no dorsal interossei. The dorsal interossei muscles, we can summarize their action by these perfects. Bad for palmar interossei adduct the fingers, and the axis here is the middle finger. If the fingers approximated toward the middle fingers, we are adducting the fingers, while if they getting away from the middle fingers, the fingers now abducted by the dorsal interossei. So remember, dab and bad, dab and bad for the action of the interossei. Dab, the action of dorsal interossei, are abductors of the fingers away from the axis, which is the middle finger here, like the direction of this arrow, while the action of the palmar interossei are adduction of the finger toward the midline axis, which is the middle finger. Bad. Nerve supply of the interossei are the ulnar nerve. Remember that the palmar interossei adduct the finger toward the axis of middle finger. Bad and dorsal interossei abduct the finger from the axis of the middle finger. Dab. Acting with the lumbricals, all interossei flexing again the metacarpophalangeal joints and extend the interphalangeal joints through their attachment in extensor expansion, this putting the hand in writing position or precision grip. And this diagram simplifies the action of the interossei. The interossei, bad palmar interossei adduct green color, and the dab dorsal interossei abduct in bluish color. Thank you very much.